So today we are going to be creating a project that was inspired by a project I created last year. So this is my Happiness in Crafting design team project, and last year G asked us to use one of her embellishment kits to create a project. And so this is the project I created. An embellishment kit, if you're not familiar with it, is one that comes with tags and envelopes and different things like that to embellish your journals. So I used her kit last year. I think this is called Cherry Blossoms Embellishment Kit, to create this little mini journal that could go inside of your junk journal or could be a standalone journal on its own. And the base of it starts out with an envelope, and then you work your way around. Well, I was thinking about this project and wanted to try another one, but make it totally different using kind of the same concept though. So today I'm using the Collage papers and backing papers from Happiness in Crafting, and I will link to those below. And so this is the Collage papers, and then on the back of the Collage papers I have printed the backing paper. So it's two different kits that you would need to get if you wanted to use this set of papers. So this one's from the Collage kit, and then once again from the backing papers. And so I thought this might be a good kit for this project. Now I haven't tried it yet. I'm going to be trying it with you, but I have made a little paper sample up just using regular cardstock. And so here are more of the backing papers. There are 5 collage papers, and then I think there were, there's 5 or 6 collage papers and then like 9 backing papers. So like I said, it's 2 separate kits. So I did make a little sample up using just some plain paper. So today I'm going to try it with this paper now. To get started on our little folio journal, we are going to, and this is like a fold-out journal too, we can use it, there's so many different ways we're going to be able to use it, and I'll show you when we get to the end. But to get started, we want to create the envelope, which is the base of our journal. So I have cut down a piece of the paper to 7.5 by 7.5. Now I forgot to mention, I printed all of my images on cardstock, with the ones that I'm going to be using for the journal, and then there's some that I just printed on 32-pound copy paper that I may tear up and add in different places. But for the base of the journal, I'm using I think it's 110-pound cardstock that I printed these on, and I've printed them front and back. So I do see a little white edge. I guess that'll be okay now. I've done cut this down. So we want to create our envelope. So I'm just going to use my punch board to do that. And for this one, we're creating an envelope that fits a card size of 3.5 by 5.5. So it tells me that I need to score at 3. So I'm just going to use my punch board to create this. Now, if you didn't have a punch board, you still could create this project. You would just need to create an envelope. So you could go online and look for a template for an envelope, or you could just fold a piece of paper up and just make a basic little envelope, like when we're folding paper and make those. And I have some videos where I do fold paper and make envelopes. They're just not, they don't have the triangular edges like this. There'll be more. Let me see if I can find one that I've made recently. I do have a recent video making a small envelope. Not this size, but you could get something similar. So when I'm talking about the envelope, it won't have the triangular edges. It'll be more squared off. But you just, if you look in that video, you can see how I create an envelope that way. That one's still a little bit smaller than this one, but it'll give you an idea how to create one. Or you can look online for a template, or you could actually use a ready-made envelope and just adjust the sizes of the rest of the project to match those. So there's different ways to do this. So I'm just going to fold up my envelope. Now I'm not going to glue it yet because I am going to decide how I'm going to use it in my journal. There's 2 different ways I can use this. I can use it as a standalone, or I could attach it to my journal. Now I am going to go back and round those corners. I want all the corners rounded on this one. And I do want to ink the edges, so I think I'll do that off camera though, so that this video doesn't get to be so long. So we have our envelope. I'm going to have to fold it so that this print is on the inside of my envelope, since I want this flap to come on the front. So you're going to have your pocket on the back, and then your flap is going to wrap this direction, opposite of where it normally would. So your flap would normally, hopefully this is making sense, and it will if you watch this video all the way through and see the whole process, it will make sense. But once you have your envelope, holding it together like this, your pocket would be on the back side, And normally you would fold your envelope down like this to close it, but instead we're going to bend that backwards and have this on the front, your envelope flap on the front of our journal, and the back of the envelope is going to be here. And so we're going to build off of the back of your envelope. So let's lay that aside and let's cut the pieces that we need. Now this is going to take just a bit of figuring for you, because you want to decide now, since you know what your flap looks like, do you want it, this is going to be the first image you see, do you want it flapped over that one, or would you prefer to have it on the, like this? You just sort of go through your papers and decide. There's different, I have different papers, so I'm going to decide which one I want next and how I want it to be. Do I want, that's sort of busy, so I kind of think I want a solid to be on the next image, and I like this one, so that's the one I'm going to go with. Well, let's just try them all, but first let's audition them all to be certain. That would look good together like that too, though. I don't think you would see the rose as much, but you would have that. Actually, I like that. I think that might be the answer. That's going to be the one. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut some strips of paper, and we're going to cut those at 3 1/4. Now if I cut this at 3 1/4, I'm going to cut these butterflies off, and I don't want to cut those butterflies off, so I'm going to look what I want in my image. So I want these butterflies, so I'm going to cut it so that butterflies are moths, I may have that wrong, but I'm going to cut it so that they're in the image. Then I'll come back and I'll cut it this direction at 3 1/4. So be sure if you have something specific that you want on your page that you fussy around that to get it. So we're going to cut it 3 1/4 by 5 3/4. And so it's going to be a page here, and I'll show you how we're going to attach it in just a few moments. So we're just going to go through, and I'm going to cut more that way. So we need 3 of these pieces that measure 3 1/4 by 5 3/4. So just go through your paper and see which ones you want to use. And the great thing about this is when we print these kits, we can go back and print more, so we can fussy around the images that we want. We don't have to worry about trying to save paper. I don't anyways when I do projects like this. So I know I want this rose on one of my pages, so I'm just going to lay it in here at 3 1/4 and see how much would get cut off. So I need to trim just a little off this side so that I'm sure this is going to be on my page, and then I'll turn it again and measure it 3 3/4, and I'll turn my light on. That's the great thing about this one. I'll turn my light on and I can see if I'm going to be cutting it off. I'm going to be cutting some off, but not the entire flower. And then I'll cut it at 5 3/4. That's going to cut my flower off, so I'll go this direction. Actually, I'm going to cut just a little off the top here. And then I'll cut it 5 3/4. So we have another page for our journal. And so let's cut one more. Let's find one more of our cardstock that we want to use as a page, and I want this one. So I'm going to cut it at 3 1/4 by 5 3/4. I'm going to trim, there's a little white spot there. I'm going to trim that off and then do 5 3/4. Okay. So now here's just a piece where I've cut a strip off of. I need to cut another strip from it at 3 1/4. And then I'm going to trim it down. I'm going to take this little white edge off of it here first. And then I'm going to trim this strip down to 2 3/4. So it will measure 3 1/4 by 2 3/4. And let's make sure I have that correct. Yes. So we have 2 of these. So we have our envelope, and then we have our strips that are cut 3 1/4 by 5 3/4. So 3 1/4 by 5 3/4, 3 strips. Then we have 2 little pieces cut at 3 1/4 by 2 3/4. So we just need to score these pieces now. So the piece that's cut 3 1/4 by 2 3/4, you want to put the 3 1/4 side up to the top of your scoreboard. and then you want to score at 1/4. Just a little piece there. Just making a little bitty flap. We're going to do the same thing with this one. Got your 3 1/4 inch side to the top and score at 1/4. Okay, for this one we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to put the 3 1/4 inch side to the top and we're going to score at 1/4. And we're going to do that for all 3 of these strips. And there we have our pieces scored. Really just explaining the envelope and cutting the strips to make sure we get the images that we want. That's probably the hardest part because this is a very simple little project to put together. So now just deciding which pages I want where is going to be the next hard part for me. So I'm just going to look here and see. I think we said we wanted this one up front, or I kind of like this one up front. It's a little busy, isn't it? This one may be even better up there. Ooh, I like that one. So it doesn't matter which one goes where. We're just going to layer them up in here, and I think they'll be fine, just like this. So I'm going to use my tag punch board, and the last time I used it, I really struggled with it. But I think I've learned the trick with this one, so I'm going to use it today. If you don't have this, you definitely can just cut it with scissors. And as I get to using this, if I don't have it figured out like I think I do, then I'll be using scissors too. But since I have it, I figure I should use it. So what you want to do is you want to fold on your score line. So just fold that 1/4 inch flap in. So then we're just going to take it, once we've got this folded in, we're just going to take it, and I'm going to put mine, if you've got this tag punch, you're going to put it on D. But if you don't, then you're just going to trim the edge off. The only thing that's important is to have all of these edges be pretty similar, pretty much the same. But you could use one and cut it, and then just cut all of them by that one. Use that one as your guide, in other words. So what I've learned is, instead of starting, I'm always starting on this end, I don't know why, but if you start on this end and you swipe it, it cuts so much easier. I don't know if it's the blade or what causes that, but that's what works. So that is how I've learned to do it. So I will have to say that it is a lot better now. In my other videos with it, I really struggled because I was cutting the wrong direction. So we have that. So let's just go through, and for each one we're going to do the same thing. We're going to fold in on our score line, and then we're going to put it in our punch, and we're going to cut it, or you're going to cut it with your scissors, and you just want to line them all up and cut them all the same. So if you're cutting with your scissors, just use one as your guide and cut them all, you know, with the same little piece cut off on each corner. But this thing does make it easier so I don't have to measure and fiddle with it. So I do like it now since I figured out the little trick. So the last time I used it, I was trying out a little sample of cutting some tags, and I figured that out, and I think I may have figured it out in one of my videos that if I cut that direction, it might have been actually in a video, I'm not sure now, but I figured that out. But since I figured that out, so far I haven't had an issue. But I'm always leery when I start back using it because I did have an issue one time that I'm always afraid that it's just going to be an issue each time. Now this one, this is our little strip. So you have your score line here and your flap. Don't worry about that side. We're not going to cut that side. We're going to cut the side opposite of that flap, and we want to cut it even just with like we did the rest of them, the same size. So we're just going to cut off the edges there. So actually I need to look at that because since it is shorter, I'm going to have to come in and cut it just a little different. Okay, so I did a little test with this one because when I did my first cut, it was wrong. So what you want to do is you want these to be the same cut. So if you're cutting yours with scissors, you could just use the piece you cut off and cut that same amount off of the 2 3/4 inch strip. Now, if you're using this punch board, just move up one line. So I was on D, so I'm just going to move up to E, and I'm going to trim it. And that should work so that they pretty much have the same amount cut off. That way they have sort of the same look to the tops of them. And hopefully you can see that. So if you're not using the tag punch and you just used these as your guide, the triangles on them, then it would work out. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold on the score lines for each one of these. So you see this little peak here that was left when we folded this and cut our tag shape, it left a little peak there. We want to cut that peak off, but instead of cutting it straight across, we're just going to cut down at an angle following the angle of the tag. And so then I'm going to go down the bottom here and I'm going to cut just a little angle in that as well. You know, like we always do when we're adding pages to things or adding like a flap to something, you want to cut that and it helps remove some of that bulk, and when you fold it over, it helps that corner not to stand out. So once again, we're just going to follow, I'm just going to follow the angle of this tag here to help with that, and then I'll cut just an angle at the bottom here. So I'm going to ink these, and I want to show you with just one of the tags how I'm going to ink it. So I'm going to ink around the edges of each one, but I'm not going to ink here. Instead, I'm going to fold this down and I'm going to ink this edge instead. Now you do not have to ink. I know some people, they don't ink anything, and then some others really ink things and grunge it up. I'm kind of a light inker on most projects, but I do like it sometimes to frame out my page, like for this, my pages, or to frame out some of my projects. So I'm just going to flip this back for just a second and ink that edge as well. And then we'll fold it back. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and ink all of those that way. Okay, so now here comes the really easy part. It's putting the whole journal together. And then we'll decorate it. But let's just put the pages together, and you just got to decide which order you want them. And I had put this one first, so I like that one. So I'm just going to take, and you see our little flap here. Now that I've inked it, you can see better. This little 1/4 inch flap here, I'm going to add glue to that flap. You could add glue, you could add score tape, you know, whatever, what you want to use. So then I'm just going to attach the flap, and I just want to line this up and down, and you know, kind of center it up and down on my envelope. And I just want to glue the flap down, but I'm leaving a gap, maybe a 1/16 of an inch gap in between the fold of the envelope front and this page. And we're just going to press that down. So now we got to figure out what our next page is, and we're just going to have to pull that flap upwards if this is it. I think this is going to be the one. Yes. So now this one we're going to fold the opposite direction. So you're going to fold it in towards the front of your page, your flap, and you're going to put glue on the back side. Okay. So then we're just going to glue that flap on top of the other flap that we just put down. We're just going to go inside that. So what we want to do is make sure we eyeball it so that we're lining them up straight up and down the same, and that we are don't want to go all the way up to where this folds over. You want to leave just a little gap so that it doesn't bind up your page. And you do want to lay your pages over like this and make sure they are lining up top and bottom. And that one lines up good enough. So then we're just going to press that down. Okay, so for this flap, we're going to add it to the next page. You can see here I already started to glue it and glued it down too soon because I made a mistake. So what we want to do is we want to add this one. We're going to flip it over to the back side. We're going to add glue to the back side, and then we're going to line this up with the top edge of our tag here. And just press it down. And I just added some ink over mine because I had messed it up some, but that's okay. And then for the next flap, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to add glue to the back of the 1/4 inch flap, and we're going to attach it to the page up against and lining it up. So you're going to have a little gap there. We're going to line it up with the bottom of this tag so that we have, so when you close it like this, you're going to have your layer tags just coming out. Just press that down. Just going to flip it back and press. So for our last tag, we are going to fold it in, the flap in towards the printed front, and we're going to add glue inside that flap there, and it's just going to wrap around the page to the back side of our envelope, and we just want to line it up, make sure we got it lined up with all the other pages up and down, and I do need to scoot it down just a little. Scoot it down just a little so everything's lined up, and it's lined up there. So once you have it lined up, you just want to press it down really good so that it doesn't come loose. So there's a couple of ways we can use this. We can use it as a fold out, so we would attach the envelope flap side to the opposite side of the page, and I'll have to figure out a different page. I don't think it matches that one great, but let's see if we can find one that matches really pretty. It may look good on this one. So we could attach it, and then you would have this here, and this could be a pocket or something, you know, however you want it to, like a tuck spot. And then you would have this side, which would just fold out, and then this would need a closure so that we could tuck something in it. So that's what I'm going to do. Now another way to use it is just to glue this shut, and then you could just attach it to your page, you know, with a paper clip, or if you glued it to your page, you could just have a pocket that you slit under here, but you would kind of lose the envelope part of the pocket. But there's many ways that you could use this. So I want to use it as a fold out. So I've got my mat here. This is from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to set some eyelets in. I'm going to show you I'm going to do a little different today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to punch some holes in here. So I'm going to use my largest hole punch for this. I'm just going to eyeball where I want it. I'm just going to center it up right here. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom, just centering it up and trying to make it about the same distance. You could measure and mark if it was very important to you, but I'm not worried about it. So I'm going to put an eyelet in here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Fiskars eyelet setter, and I'm going to put this eyelet in because I really struggled with squeezing this one and getting it set right. So I'm going to do this, but this one's very loud, and so I'm going to do it real quick. I'm going to mute the sound, and then I'll be back to explain show what I did. Okay, so for this one, it's just an eyelet setter here, and then you just pull up, but it's a spring here. You have to be very careful not to pinch your fingers. So I'm still not decided if I absolutely love this one or not. I did pull mine apart when I first got it because I was pulling too hard and this whole end came off, and that was a disaster. But I was able to put it back together, but I honestly can't tell you yet if I'm crazy about it or not. What I like about it is being able to set these eyelets any place you want to and not having to find where it fits inside the throat of that. But it is quite noisy. So we have those eyelets set. So now I'm just going to take, and I think I will use some of this to make a bow and tie it shut. I don't know what the correct amount to measure for this, so I did measure about 2.5 the length of from eyelet to eyelet. We'll see how that works. I may have got too much here, or maybe not enough, but we shall see. You could use string for this. You could use, you know, this is crinkled seam binding, but you could use anything that you wanted to tie it shut. So I'm just going to tie right here. And I like that there. But you could use anything. And this may be too much here. I should have went with some string, but I kind of like that little bunched up look. So I will see how I like it as I go along. So here is the completed little mini journal, and I've just added some lace to the front here, and then I added some crochet lace to the little page that was in the book. So we had this as a page in our book, and you can use it as a page, but I'm going to use it differently. I'm going to use this as a flap over my page, and then I'm going to glue this down here so that this fold out is attached to my journal this way. Then you'll fold it up, and when you turn the page, you'll have this tag here. Since the other side's going to be glued down, this will just be a flip out, and that's how I'm going to attach it. I'm not going to attach it yet since I am still needing to take pictures of it and everything for Instagram and for my thumbnail. So I will glue it in later, and I'm just going to leave this one plain like this. I had planned on adding pockets and things, but with this paper, I think it will be awesome to journal on. So I think it'd be great to, you could add pictures, but you could also just journal on these pages, and I think that would be a great thing to have. And so I'll leave those options open for myself, and then if I decide once it's glued in that I want to add pockets, you can always add pockets later. But I do love how this little journal turned out, and now you could send this as Happy Mail and it just be a little journal for somebody. If I was sending it as a journal for somebody, I would leave the crocheted lace off of this edge, and I would probably fold this in like this, or you can fold it over this edge here. Let me do that real quick so that I had it like this. And then I would also probably not include this part, but just glue your envelope shut and make a little journal like that that you could mail, because it is really flat. You could mail this to someone as Happy Mail and as a little gift. And another idea is to add pockets and add ephemera and things in there. And I think I showed you, but let me show you here. For this little pocket, I've just used one of the sheets from the kit, and I've just torn it out and inked it, and then I've got a little French flashcard here that I'm just putting in there with it. And there we have our little journal. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video and that it will inspire you to try one of these little journals. And I will link below to the kits that I'm using for this. And I'll also link below to this little journal that I created last year, because it's a fun one as well that you can send as Happy Mail or use as a journal and add photos to. This one I didn't do anything to it because it was my sample, but you could add this to a journal. So there's a lot of different ways you can use these, and so I will link to it as well. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.